Welcome to ICAACT Radio, your civilian citizens dedicated to exposing domestic and international terrorism. Hello and welcome back, ICAACT Radio listeners. I'm your host, Jesse Beltran of the United States. Welcome you to today's show. Today is August 8th of 2015. Today is Saturday, and congratulations on the United We Strike Marathon weekend. This is our 6-year anniversary, and we thank all of those who have been involved and created this opportunity in order to allow a forum in which we could educate not only the public, but the world on atrocities and wrongdoings that are happening in order to effect change. And our slogan is, preaching don't buy, don't comply, ask why. Today's topic is going to be about the anti-austerity movement. And for those of you who don't know, austerity basically is an imposed economic system upon someone. And in this case, an imposed economic system imposed upon every American and every European and basically everyone around the world who is affected by basically capitalism in the form of corporate giants. And in this case, those corporate giants are the Federal Reserve and the European Central Bank. Now, I want to talk about how this directly affects us in the United States momentarily. And I'm going to read it from a report that says the San Francisco Chronicle notes that it is difficult to keep track of foreclosure rates now, let alone during the Great Depression. Foreclosure rates of the late 2000s are often compared with those of the Great Depression, which took place through the first half of the 1930s. However, there were no public or private agencies keeping track of foreclosure rates at that time. Indeed, the government still does not keep official statistics on the number of homes in foreclosure or repossessed by banks and lenders, but the Chronicle provides estimates of foreclosures during the 1930s. A 2008 article by David C. Willock, an economist at the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, cited annual reports issued by the Federal Home Loan Bank Board during the 1930s. These reports revealed that the foreclosure rate exceeded 1% from 1931 until 1935. At the worst point in the Depression-era economic crisis in the 1933s, about 1,000 home loans were being placed in foreclosure by banks every day. How does this compare to the last 5 years? Realty Track notes, and this is the report through North Carolina State University, that from January 2007 to December 2011, there were more than 4 million completed foreclosures and more than 8.2 million foreclosure starts. CoreLogic reported a year ago approximately 1.4 million homes, or 3.4% of all homes with a mortgage, were in the national foreclosure inventory as of May 2012, compared to 1.5 million, or 3.5%, in May 2011 and 1.4 million, or 3.4%, in April of 2012. The foreclosure inventory is the share of all mortgage homes in some stage of the foreclosure process. Given that there are currently around 316 million Americans, more than twice the number during the Great Depression, such a high foreclosure rate means that there may well be as many people suffering foreclosures than during the Great Depression or more. An NBC News report this month, already some 5 million homes have been lost to foreclosure. Estimates of future foreclosures range widely. The bottom line here is this. This anti-austerity movement is basically saying we've had enough. You've had the countries of Greece, for example, who are, according to reports, on the verge of bankruptcy because they're standing up. They have a prime minister and they have a group of political people who envisioned people first before the banks. And this is really what the issue is at hand. And what is happening is the European banks are really putting their foot down and they're really trying to squash this and put this fire out. they never anticipated that such a progressive thinking way of doing government would actually come to fruition. And now we have it just before us. What I'd like to do next is play a little soundbite from Amy Goodman from Democracy Now! And she goes through very eloquently and explains what's going on in Greece and does a couple of interviews, and then goes on and asks an English reporter to further define what austerity means in this situation.
From Demos to Podemos, popular uprisings in Greece and Spain. I'm Amy Goodman, host of Democracy Now! With my weekly Breaking the Sound Barrier podcast. In ancient Greece, the birthplace of democracy, power derived from demos, the people. Well, the people of contemporary Greece have been reeling under austerity for 5 years and have voted to put an end to it. In January, the Anti-Austerity Syriza party was swept to power in national elections. Greece is a member of the so-called Eurozone, the nations that joined together with a common currency back in 1999. Following the economic crash of 2009, the Greek economy was in shambles. In 2012, I interviewed economist and Syriza member Yanis Varoufakis, who is now Greece's Minister of Finance.
Greece is going through its Great Depression, something akin to what the United States went in the 1930s. This is not just a change of government. It's a social economy that has entered into a deep coma. It's a country that is effectively verging to the status of a failed state.
In order to stabilize the Greek economy, a bailout package was proposed, delivered by 3 institutions reviled in Greece as the Troika: the European Commission, the European Central Bank, and the International Monetary Fund. In exchange for the bailout of more than 100 billion euros, Greece would have to impose strict austerity measures, including mass layoffs of public sector workers and the sale of public resources, like government-owned port facilities. For years, the main political parties in Greece accepted the demands of the Troika, repressing the resulting protests with police violence. The new party in power, Syriza, is an acronym meaning Coalition of the Radical Left. And Varoufakis, along with his colleague Alexis Tsipras, now Prime Minister, wasted no time challenging the austerity measures. Paul Mason, economics editor at Channel 4 News in the United Kingdom, has been doing some of the best reporting in English on the Greek crisis. On the Democracy Now! News Hour, I asked him to explain austerity.
Austerity in Greece means that something like a 50% measurable increase in male suicides. It means real wages fell by 25% in 5 years. It means that the economy lost a quarter of its capacity. It has shrunk by 25%. If you sit at a cafe in Athens, talk to the person who's serving you, they'll be a graduate. They'll be living probably more than one person to a room, and their income will be the average income is about 500 to 600 euros a month. So think the same in dollars. But you talk to people, they'll be earning 400 a month, so 100 euros a week, and that's for graduates. That is austerity. And then you've got the 300,000 families who can't afford electricity. Something like sort of 15% of people now are on the edge of or have lost their healthcare. And Greece has a healthcare system based on insurance. When you lose it, you join the queue with the undocumented migrants at the Red Cross.
Interviewed in the German magazine Der Spiegel, Yanis Varoufakis called austerity fiscal waterboarding. Greeks as well have not forgotten that Germany, under the Nazis, brutally occupied their nation for 4 years during World War II. Syriza's representative in the European Parliament, 92-year-old Manolis Gletsos, was imprisoned by the Nazis after he tore a swastika flag off the Acropolis. Again, Paul Mason.
This is something that nobody in Europe expected, least of all the Germans. And the Germans just basically now, I think the Schäuble there and the German political class just can't get their head around the idea that a party has been elected that wants to do something so radically different that they can't do it without breaking the rules that the Eurozone has been formed around.
Spain also has been racked by the global recession, with 50% unemployment among young people. Bank foreclosures on homes are rampant, leaving people homeless but still required to pay the entire mortgage, leading to many suicides.
You heard it here. It was very well put. if you go up against the institutions or the status quo, you would be subjected to political waterboarding. As you have heard, that in that case, literally millions of people are being left homeless. You're seeing a substantial increase in suicides. And I ask everyone listening, are you seeing similarities here in your communities, in your countries? It's something to think about. And the bottom line here is we all know what the agenda is. And the agenda is about the elites maintaining control and the middle class becoming poorer and poorer, and the poorest of the poor are the ones who are suffering. And in that group are every aspect of society. That means it doesn't matter what color you are. This is affecting everyone. Now, there are some groups that are predominantly affected. I think the statistics show that if you are African American, particularly a single mother, or Hispanic descent, you most likely will be the ones who are most immediately affected. Now, what's interesting in this case, from a common people, is arising a very uncommon man, and his name is Pablo Iglesias from Spain. He's the Secretary General of a new political party called Podemos, or a movement, I should say. And after establishing themselves for 1 month, they gained immediately 4 seats in the European Parliament. And there are some polls currently suggesting by this next year, Mr. Pablo Iglesias may be the next Prime Minister of Spain. Now, I'm going to be playing a soundbite about his beliefs and what he says austerity has caused in Spain. And in a nutshell, basically he talks about how, obviously we've heard how people are losing their homes. He talks about the education system has been forced to be mediocre at best, and how austerity does not allow for democracy to flourish. And here's that soundbite now.
Austerity means that people is expulsed of their homes. Austerity means that the social services don't work anymore. Austerity means that public schools have not the elements, the means to develop their activity. Austerity means that the countries have not sovereignty anymore, and we became a colony of the financial powers and a colony of Germany. Austerity probably means the end of democracy. I think if we don't have democratic control of economy, we don't have democracy. It's impossible to separate economy and democracy, in my opinion.
Now, what was interesting there is, if you heard Mr. Iglesias speak, he said that essentially what they will become, if this continues, a colony of Germany occupation. So I hope we are awakening. You're seeing a movement in which those who have been put in a position where we are supposedly the weak, the little people, where you're now starting to see some change, where the little people are waking up and saying, hey, we've had enough and we're not going to tolerate this anymore. We see a lot of similarities here in the United States, where the people are starting to wake up. Maybe not as quickly as they are in Europe, but we eventually will. And when we do, this is a perfect example on how those who are insisting that the government, if it's a true democracy, should be of the people and by the people, that it is quite possible, and Mr. Iglesias has shown that very well, and they are in fear. The powers that be never anticipated that any group would rise to power who would buck the status quo. And the issue now is, how do they enforce the contractual agreements that they